Okay, so we're gonna shift gears a little bit from AI-powered Kubernetes security, which is actually, interestingly enough, what I spent my last job doing. So there's a little bit of crossover there, to a story that's going to be about my journey from playing football and what I'm doing now, which is helping people with cloud-native technology. So to set this scene, I was scouted at 4 years old to play professional football. How you can scout somebody at 4 years old, I have genuinely no idea, but it happened. And football was kind of everything to me. And then I had a career-ending injury at 18, and my whole world got turned upside down, and we'll get into that in a little bit more detail. But really, it's about a story of resiliency, passion, and lessons learned from football, and how they actually translate into working in industry. And there's some obvious crossovers and some less obvious crossovers. One being like dodging opponents on a football field, like help me dodge bugs. But one of the things I like to do is make sure that all of the talks that I give have user participation. So if you scan this QR code, there's a couple of questions along the way. I want you guys to feed back and ask questions. Don't hesitate to jump in, right? After all, the best teams work together, and today we're all on the same team. This is a rough breakdown of my journey. So like I said, I got scouted at 4 years old, but life has a bunch of surprises, right? And there was curveballs in the way here. And I had to reassess and I had to readapt. And there was unexpected kind of twists and turns, right? Both kind of triumphs whilst playing football. There was also a bunch of challenges to do this kind of transition to doing something else. But it's not really where you start that defines you. It's like how we navigate these challenges that really give you the battle scars. So when you go to battle in the industry, or whether you go to battle on the sports field, you can use these challenges that you've had in the past to actually adapt and help your organization. So the first question that I want to ask, what's the most important trait for success in any team? Think of any team that you've been in, sports team, work team, like what makes someone like truly valuable within your team? So hopefully if this works, you should be able to, connection loss, you're kidding me. Don't drop the Wi-Fi now. Oh wow, I don't have the Wi-Fi. Not even demo gods at this point, it's just Wi-Fi gods, I guess. All right, we're in. Thanks. Did we get active poll? Negative. All right, we're going to give up on that. Shout out some things that you think are important within a team. What's like a useful trait to have? Yeah, it's a good one. That's very important. Yep, that's a huge one for sure. Yeah, and there's no one right answer, right? It's a culmination of a bunch of different traits that make you the ideal sports person to be on a team, or the ideal person to be within the organization that you're currently working with, right? And there's some obvious ones, like you're going to have to be good at teamwork, you're going to have good discipline, and you need to be thinking strategically, not short term. And like I said, these skills cross over in my journey, and I'm sure they actually cross over in yours as well. So I want to roll back to, this is me. I don't know what happened from like me being a kid to looking like this, but anyway, I was 4 years old, right? And I remember when I was about 10, someone sat down by the side of me and said, look, you have the ability to like potentially make it in football. And I'm thinking, great, I'm going to be on like £1 billion a week, no problems. Everything's going to be fantastic. And football like wasn't just my world. It became like literally everything. I was thinking about it constantly, right? I was playing, I was practicing, I was dreaming about it, right? And if you translate that into tech in the world that you're doing and the work that you're doing right now, you probably have those times when you fall asleep but can't fall asleep because you're thinking about how to solve a problem at work. It was very similar to me, right? And then there was this dedication that kind of brought discipline and focus, and like the belief that was instilled in me that if I worked hard enough, I'd be able to play on the biggest stages, thinking they would be stadiums, right? But it turns out they weren't stadiums. They were talking at conferences and going and helping other people, right? But these are lessons that I learned from the field, but they actually translate into life as well. So there's some obvious ones, right? I'd say that these were pretty obvious. Even empathy actually got called out. But like teamwork is really about no one wins alone, right? Collaboration is key in teams, no matter whether they're sports teams or whether they're technical, engineering, or product teams, right? If the team doesn't work together cohesively, you're not going to get anywhere, right? And that kind of transitions nicely to communication, right? It's crucial on the pitch. One of the things we used to do in training is we used to actually try and play football in silence, and it's absolutely impossible. And it's very similar to trying to build products in silence. When teams don't talk to each other and they're siloed, you're not going to get the best outcome. And it's really about ensuring that we have alignment between these teams. And then empathy, to me, is my favorite one, and I'm glad someone called it out. It's understanding everyone has strengths and also everyone has areas that they can improve. And it's about building a team where everyone's strengths can shine. from the most junior developer to the most senior developer, but giving those people a chance to be able to talk. And we'll come on to that in a little bit. And these kind of traits really build this strong, cohesive team. And then some kind of maybe less obvious ones, right? We've got strategic planning. So you can't play football without a plan. You can try. A lot of Premier League teams currently are trying to do this, but it doesn't really work. But you have to have the vision to execute, right? And without a plan, you're not going to be able to do anything. You're not going to be able to win a football match, and you're also not going to be able to release a product unless you've got a vision and a kind of executed strategy. Leadership's obvious, right? There's a captain on a football pitch, but there's leaders within the football team, right? And there's also leaders within your teams and your organizations. The tech lead is a very important person, right? But the tech lead is actually leaning on everybody else underneath them to raise themselves up, to drive whatever change they're trying to make. Then we have agility and adaptability, right? So that's thinking on your feet in football, but that's pivoting to challenges that you have in the tech industry. And these ensure that our teams are well-directed and adaptable to different changes. And then some other ones, right? We have to perform under pressure, right? Imagine last minutes of the game, you're trying to win a football match. You have to be able to perform under pressure. And it's the same in a number of instances in tech, right? It could be doing an incident, right? How do you perform under pressure in an incident? Or it could be like these tight deadlines that we have to work to that half the time are arbitrary deadlines that people have just made up, but they tell you that you have to ship something like yesterday. Then we've got resilience and perseverance. So you can lose games in football, like I lost tons, right? But it's about bouncing back that really defines your career. And then mental stamina is this kind of ability to focus for the whole game. But if you take that into tech, it's like these sustained levels of concentration that you need for periods of time to be able to achieve and understand something in depth. And I think that's really important, right? You have to be able to give your engineers the space that they require to be able to learn something. They can't just learn something by putting them in a meeting or asking them to go to sprint planning constantly, right? They have to have this dedicated focus time. Okay, hands up for anyone who has an idea what this percentage is. Sham, you're not allowed to answer. Yeah, this is the percentage of academy players that make it professional. So when you play professional football, they don't actually tell you this statistic for obvious reasons, but it's like a staggering stat, right? It tells you and teaches you how hard it actually is to make it to the top. And like many people have hope, but none of them actually ever make it, right? Even to remotely professional careers or like even semi-professional, right? And I'm not telling you that focusing on sport and doing that and doing something you love is not important. The important thing is to realize that you've got to have another path. Look at the percentage to make that 100. It's a huge number, right? We have to have another path, whether that be going and doing something else in sport or whether that be doing something like I'm doing now. I had to have a way out because I knew this wasn't, if I was lucky, I was going to be in this number. Turns out I was unlucky. So life throws many curveballs, right? I had a knee injury at 18. It's literally changed everything. Like my whole entire world just stopped in an instant like that, right? Pretty graphic. I could spin my kneecap both ways around my leg. I couldn't weight bear for 18 months. This was literally me. I couldn't move. I couldn't do anything. I was relying on my parents to do everything for me, right? And I had these dreams of being a professional footballer and going and playing on the biggest stages, right? And I was just devastated, right? But the important thing is like the setbacks make you rethink everything, right? You're confronted head on with like immediate loss. And I realized I had a choice, right? And the choice is I let this setback define me or I redefine myself. Those were the two options. So it was a tough period, right? I lost everything, lost friends. I went into depression. I threw my bed through my bedroom window. It was a horrific 18 months, like I'm not going to lie to you. But I realized like I needed a new path and I needed to redefine myself and who I wanted to be and what I wanted to do. And that was really like I had to explore new interests. Luckily, I had what I call like a professional leg up because my dad worked in IT and was an IT director, so I had a way in. I just had to read a lot of books. Some of them were unuseful books. I'm not going to name which languages were unuseful, but you can probably imagine one of them begins with P and has another P in it as well. The transition was hard, right? It was about rediscovering who I was again. And who's faced a challenge like head on that means they've reconsidered their direction. And I'm not talking about like a small pivot. I'm talking like a full-blown U-turn. This wasn't like just changing tech. This was changing like a whole entire career path. And it's really these challenges that kind of shape who we are today. So then as I was talking about, this transition from tech wasn't easy, right? It had lots of challenges. We're looking at huge amounts of curveballs. Everything felt super overwhelming. If you've looked at the CNCF landscape on your browser, you have to zoom out to see all of the projects that you possibly can choose from. The landscape that we're dealing with is just vast. And it's which one do I even choose of this huge, humongous list? And like, how do I make sure that the one that I do choose is not a waste of time? Going back to the language beginning with P, I didn't want to waste my time anymore. But like football, right? Setbacks in tech became my new training ground, right? So all of the time that I spent training, playing professional football, I just used that time in to do different things, right? So I was up every morning when I was playing football at 5 and I'd go to bed at 10 p.m. And I was doing the same thing, but I was doing it with reading books and writing code and learning what the hell a VPC was. And like someone mentioned Kubernetes and I was like, yeah, why not? Let's just go with that. What could possibly go wrong? But I leaned on that kind of discipline and perseverance and resilience that I had from football, and I just kept going. And I knew like at the end something would happen. And then these are the kind of phases that I went through, right? So we started at the beginning, like I was talking about before, late nights, mistakes, frustration. I'm just gonna go and do something else. Maybe like a sports commentator is more useful because it doesn't require you to have to read books constantly and like type on the keyboard. And then I found my passion in kind of cloud native tech. And luckily enough, now I've trained over 8,000 people worldwide, right? From playing professional football and not even knowing what the hell a Kubernetes cluster is, now to like being able to be a consultant and trainer. Like I've taken that passion that I had and just repositioned it somewhere else. And I love like sharing and like helping other people, right? So if you've got a question in this conference for the next couple of days, just feel free to come up and ask it. Like I'll happily help you. Then like super massive pivot because we haven't got much time. I just discovered Kubernetes. There's a whole journey before this. You can come and ask me afterwards. And it felt like this kind of missing puzzle piece, right? Because Kubernetes is all about orchestration and managing components effectively. And if you take that to the sports field, you're like a coach. You're like managing these different players and player relationships and working out where I should position people on the field. And Kubernetes is similar if you squint hard enough. It's about where do I position workloads and how do I get the most out of them? And how do I make sure that my Amazon bill is not like £1 million a month? And it really combined my kind of love for strategy and teamwork and discipline. And it led on to this bigger picture, which to me was like building self-service platforms. And there's a lot of similarities from building self-service platforms in cloud native technology. And like in football, where players have to make these quick decisions and be able to give the tools to make these decisions, you've got to empower developers to be able to control their workflows. You've got to give them enough rope to hang themselves, but make sure they're at least on the guardrails that you've set out to do. And agility is key in today's tech environment. If you're standing still, you're dead at this point. And we need to be able to deploy our applications quickly, but without these kind of manual process delays. And I spent a bunch of time working in banks, and I can tell you that they have a lot of manual process delays. And it's about giving them the freedom to be able to move quickly, right? But like within this structure whereby they have a set of guardrails that they can work to. And there's a lot of parallels between kind of sport and technology. Like in football, I learned a lot about like teamwork and leadership and strategy and discipline and all those kind of things. But then when I was playing football, I was managing a field of players, right? But now when I'm doing clusters and stuff like that, I'm just managing a field of containers. It's similar, but slightly different. And a lot of the success comes from combining these two strengths together, right? It's understanding how people work in an industry, whether that be a sports industry or a different industry, and working out how I can get the most out of those types of people. And then football and tech, like to me at least, to highlight the importance of what I call like the human element, right? In football, it's about connection. How well can you connect with someone? How well can you communicate? But like the most important thing is how well can you trust the person next to you? And it's exactly the same in tech. How well can he trust and she trust you? And then vice versa, how much can you trust them? And once we start to understand that it's about the human element, the tech is easy, right? It doesn't matter what language you code in, et cetera, et cetera. It's the people that make the difference. And building self-service platforms means that you have to understand and meet the developers in the middle and build this collaborative work environment and put your arm around them and say, look, there's a reason why we chose Prometheus and you want something else, right? And here's the reasons why, but we'll work with you and structure it in such a way that it becomes relatively easy, right? So for every project, just remember that the tech is driven by a team of people collaborating. If the people don't collaborate, then you're not really building much. And then I went to a conference a long time ago and was talking about kind of personal brand and how personal brand is you just go out there and talk to people, right? But it's not. It's about creating value for others. It's not actually about this kind of self-promotion. And in football, your reputation is based on how well you interact with both people at the club, but also externally from the club, because you have a reputation that you've got to uphold, and how you lead and how you perform under pressure. And in tech, like the brand is about like collaborating and building trust. And can I trust you? And can I work with you? And are you authentic and consistent in the way that you approach and deal with certain situations, right? I've been in many organizations in very highly stressful environments. And it's the way that you communicate and interact with different people in the highly stressful times that people remember. They don't remember the 9 till 5, everything's golden and everything's chocolates and roses. It's when the beep hits the fan that they really lean on the person, because it's how you can connect and collaborate, right? And it's about creating opportunities for others. And then like success to me at least is amplified by community, both in football and in tech, right? No player or professional achieves greatness alone. There's a very few of those that actually do that. Some of them do. And I created this club called the Cloud Native Club. And it's essentially a community that supports each other. And its job is to raise everybody up, right? Why did I do this? If it wasn't for the Cloud Native community, I would not be on stage right now talking about what I'm talking about, right? There was a bunch of people that have helped me on my journey to get from playing football to what I'm doing now. This is my way of giving back, right? That's all this is about. This is not about me trying to get a load of people to be mentor people. It's about building and establishing connections. Prime example, there's a guy from Brazil now helping a guy in New Zealand with this problem. Neither of them have spoke to each other ever before, and they're now collaborating and actually fixing something. That's what this is about. It's an inclusive place to grow. So I'm inviting you all to join. There's a bunch of things that we do regularly. Like we're starting and kicking off the My Journey series, which is going to start with Joe Bader. Hands up people that know who Joe Bader is. So Joe had the first ever commit on the Kubernetes repository. So he's going to talk about his journey that he went on from startup to being acquired to now being semi-retired at the age of 40 something. So yeah, it's about inspiring the next generation. The thing to note is challenges aren't obstacles. They're seen as obstacles, but actually they're just huge opportunities. They're opportunities to grow, to learn, but most importantly, to come back stronger. And it's about embracing those challenges kind of head on and using them to grow and using the skills that you've had previously to learn from and leverage in your next challenge, right? And there's 3 key takeaways that I want you to take away. One is resilience, right? Just keep going when things don't go to plan, right? There's many times when that happens in life, that happens in technology as well. Many times where I spent loads of late nights learning about things that I shouldn't be learning about. Alas, we're still here. Constant learning, right? The landscape's constantly changing. Everyone's now going to become an AI engineer. I just spent 5 years becoming a YAML indentation expert. It turns out that's probably going to be a waste of time. We're going to have to learn new skills and learn how to use new technology, and we're constantly keeping moving. And then I think the most important one is like adaptability, right? Being able to pivot and embrace these new opportunities, right? And these are principles to help you navigate and help me navigate challenges like career shifts or career changes, or even like life stages, right? These are really important things and skills to have. One of the questions I want to ask, and we can't do the Slido, so we're just going to use hands, is which of these do you think is most important? Hands up for resilience, for continuous learning, or for adaptability? Yeah, adaptability always wins hands down. And I agree, right? We have to be adaptable. So there's a unified approach now to life and work that brings these kind of diverse elements together, right? And football and tech is, like we talked about before, is about orchestrating people, right? It's not orchestrating necessarily technologies. Technologies is just a means to an end, right? It's about this kind of leadership and strategy and how we execute. Like I was executing on a football field, now I'm executing in a boardroom, right? That's really the difference here. And I want to leave you with one thought, right? Which is I want you to embrace change for here on in. Don't fear it, right? Welcome it as an opportunity to learn and grow and evolve. And like every setback is an opportunity, right? And every challenge is a chance to grow. And whether you're on a pitch or behind a laptop or like anywhere else in life, just embrace it head on. Like the journey, it's the cliche, right? The journey is more important and more interesting than the destination. So like I'm telling you, just keep pushing forward, right? Learning, and most importantly, just enjoy yourself. Thanks.
So do you have questions? Any questions? Yeah.
So you mentioned that the people are some of the most important ingredients. How do you curate that ingredient in your businesses and in your journey? How do you find the right people to go on the journey with you?
So it's funny, I was talking about, I got to witness an interview with Elon Musk in Dubai, and he said a really interesting quote that I remember, which is when I interview people, I ask them the question until they think that I'm absolutely batshit crazy about what I'm trying to achieve. And then I drill in and understand what they're going to do and why they think that's absolutely crazy. And I think in terms of building the right team, it's about collaboration and inclusiveness. I'm definitely interested in the skill set that you bring, right? But what problems have you solved in the past? What battle scars do you have? Some people have a huge amount of battle scars because they've spent so much time in industry, but some people don't have that many battle scars. But I think it's really about building this collaborative set of people that come from different diverse backgrounds, and having a bunch of sysadmins, and that's all the platform engineering team is not going to work, right? You've got to have people that have been part of developer experience, people that can communicate well outbound and also inbound. And it's about knowing when to use extroverts and knowing when to use introverts. And those two groups of people have different job roles, but can still be successful in the same team. They just have slightly different functions that they perform. So really, for me, it was about, do you sit in the introverted or extroverted camp? And depending upon what camp you sit in, how do you best fit in my team that I'm building? And where do I see you? So I'm pigeonholing you a little bit into, are you going to be an outward communicator or are you going to be an inward communicator? And then are you going to communicate up or are you going to communicate sideways? And to me, those are different types of people that can have different skill sets. Sometimes you're lucky enough to have the whole round out shape, but sometimes you're not. And it's about, seeing what skills and experience you have and where you sit. I think communication is key. If you can't communicate, then we're not going to get anywhere.
Thank you.
You mentioned battle scars. How do you stop yourself after a long period of time from feeling cynical?
I don't feel cynical. So I don't talk about failure. You'll never hear me say the word failure. I call it a lesson learned. Sometimes those lessons learned are expensive lessons. Sometimes they're cheap lessons. But as long as I can take the lesson from that, and when I move forward, I always remember subconsciously, do you remember that time when I did X? And what did I do? And how do I make sure that I don't make that kind of mistake again? And I have a set of run books for different types of scenarios. And I do more as an industry, right? Is we do this kind of post-mortem for incidents, but we don't do post-mortems on ourselves enough. And actually there's so many lessons we can learn if we just sat there and thought about, what did I learn from that experience? Like, I went to that job and I did that thing, and what did I learn from it? Good things, bad things. And then when I go and interview for the next place, how do I make sure that I don't make those kind of mistakes? So I'm not really cynical, right? I was jokingly being cynical about learning different languages.
I meant generally. It's just.
But yeah, I think it's about taking it as a lesson learned. Don't take it as a failure. I failed many times, but I don't deem them as failures. They're just lessons that I learned, and I won't make that. I'll try, touch wood, not to make that mistake again.